Okay, today's math skill review is going to be adding and subtracting decimals. Definitely a great thing to make sure you've got down pat, as you'll be doing a lot of working with these and negative decimals as you move up into seventh grade. So, um, all right, adding and subtracting decimals. The first thing I'll do is go over a couple key ideas, some big things that you need to consider whenever you are finding sums and differences of decimals. The biggest thing is, and the only the only thing I'm going to say today is when you add or subtract decimals, you must line up your place values. Before you begin adding or subtracting, you want to make sure that the problem is written up and down, so vertically, and you want to make sure that all of the place values are in the same line. If they're not, rewrite it. So what does that mean? Let's look at an example. Here I've got 8 and 13 hundredths plus 2 and 76 hundredths. Simple enough, but the only way you're going to find success with this is if you make sure that your place values are aligned. So, for example, this 1 in the first number is in the tenths place. In the other number that we're adding, the tenths place is occupied by a 7. I need to make sure that when I write this problem, those two numbers are lined up, and then everything else should be as well, as long as you are a neat writer. Make sure you're taking your time to be neat. I know that might sound a bit annoying, but neatness is a key factor to being successful in math, believe it or not. Anyways, now look, my ones places are aligned, my decimals are lined up, now my tenths places are lined up, and now my hundredths, the 3 and the 6 are in the hundredths place. Those are lined up as well. And now I can add very easily 6 plus 3, 7 plus 1. The decimal can drop right down, and then 8 plus 2 is 10. So 8 and 13 hundredths plus 2 and 76 hundredths, final answer, 10 and 89 hundredths. Just make sure that you line up your place values and you will be good to go. Let's do a subtraction example. Here I've got 21 and 9 tenths minus 1 and 605 thousandths. So in doing this, pick a place value that is in both of the numbers and line those up. I'm going to go with the tenths place again, so that's a 9 and a 6. And if I line those up, everything else should line up as well. So 21.9 and then 1.605. So the 9 and the 6 in the tenths place are lined up, the decimals are lined up, the ones places are lined up. The only thing I notice here is that the second number has 2 extra place values, whereas the first number doesn't. So a good thing to do is to add placeholder zeros. Adding zeros at the end of a number does not change the value of the number at all. So this is still 21 and 9 tenths. I could put a million zeros after this, and it would still be 21 and 9 tenths. The only reason I'm adding zeros here is to make sure that I've got something lined up with this 5 in the thousands place and this 0 in the hundreds place. Now that everything's lined up, let's subtract. I'm going to have to borrow because I can't do 0 minus 5. So that's going to become an 8. That's going to become a 10. And then I'm going to borrow from this to make this a 10. 10 minus 5 is 5. 9 minus 0 is 9. 8 minus 6 is 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. And 2 minus nothing is 2. So my final difference here, 21 and 9 tenths minus 1 and 605 thousandths, best possible answer is 20 and 295 thousandths. And the only other thing I'm going to do in this video is why not do some word problems, because it gets kind of boring working with just plain old decimals. So the first example I pulled up is about gymnastics. We've got our little gymnast person. I have no idea who she is, but whatever. A gymnast's score for a routine. If you've ever watched the Olympics or anything with gymnastics, they always have these complex ways to calculate scores. Finding the sum. So that's a keyword. sum. We're going to add. What are we going to add? We're going to add the difficulty score and the execution score. And then we're going to subtract any penalties. So let's see here. We're going to add the difficulty score, 6.9, I see that right here, 6.9, plus, now it says the execution score starts at a 10 and is reduced by deductions. So this right here is not her execution score. These are the deductions. Everyone starts off with a 10, and then they lose points for making little slip-ups in their routine. So this person made 1.534 points worth of deductions. So we have to find what her execution score is. So her difficulty score plus her execution score, and then it says minus, so we're going to reduce her score minus the penalties, and the penalties that she received were 0.3. Cool. So the first thing we're going to do, remember order of operations, we got to do parentheses first. We're going to actually subtract first. So 10 minus 1.534, lining up my place values, adding some placeholder zeros. You're going to have to borrow. That's going to be a 10, which then becomes a 9. That's going to be a 10, but you have to borrow, so it's going to become a 9. That's going to become a 10, but it needs to borrow, a 9. And finally, this becomes a 10. Cool. And then when you do the subtraction, you get 8.46. 10 minus 4 is 6, 9 minus 3 is 6, 9 minus 5 is 4, 9 minus 1 is 8, 8.466. So now we're at 6.9 plus 8.466 minus 0.3. All right, and then we're going to add this. I'll do it over here. 6.9 plus 8.466. Add my placeholder zeros, and I'm going to get 15. I'm not showing all of the steps here, but when you do your addition, you'll get 15.366. And the last thing that I need to do is to subtract by 3/10. Let's scroll down a little bit. 15.366 minus 0.3. The big thing is, I know most of you can add and subtract totally fine. Just setting up the problem correctly, lining up your place values, and then adding any zeros that you need to hold the place value. So here, my final answer is going to be 15.066. So this gymnast, after her score was calculated, received a 15.066. Cool. Last one, promise, last problem for the day. The Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool. You might have seen this, maybe you've been there in person or seen pictures of it. It's a super popular, iconic place to visit if you ever go to Washington, D.C. And if you go to LCJSMS in 8th grade, the trip is to Washington, D.C., and we visit this pool. So if you haven't seen it in person before, hopefully in a couple years you will. Anyways, the pool is pretty much a rectangle. It's not perfect, but it's approximately a rectangle. And I'm going to fill in some measurements here. The width is, that's right here, is about 50.9 meters. And the length, so all the way from one side to the other, is 618.44 meters. And the question is, if you walked the total way around the pool itself, the perimeter of the pool, if you walked around all four sides, about how many meters would you have walked? Well, what is this asking? It's asking for the total sum of all the sides, because you're walking 618.44, and then 50.9, and then another 618, and then another 50.9. So you just need to add everything together. 618.44 plus 618.44. Notice how I'm lining everything up. Plus 50.9, and I'm adding a placeholder 0, plus 50.9. I'm not going to sit here and do every little step of addition, but the key is lining up your place values, adding placeholder zeros, and once you do the addition, fun fact, if you were to walk around the perimeter of the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool, you will have walked approximately 1,338.68 meters. Anyways, that's today's lesson, adding and subtracting decimals. Line up those place values. Have a fantastic Monday. If you have questions, reach out. Otherwise, bye-bye.